Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today we are going to talk about something called serverless and what's the component behind, how serverless runs, and what is the charge that cloud provider is taking for to use the serverless components. So we're going to discuss something the four main topic. So first we get into it. What is serverless? The serverless computing is a cloud computing model in which the cloud provider manages the infrastructure and automatically allocates the resources as needed, and developers to focus on writing code without worrying about the servers, scaling, or infrastructure management. So this is the simple method of what exactly the serverless. We will discuss more about it, what and how exactly the serverless works, and what is called fast, and what is called event triggers, and what is called a API gateway, and authentication mechanism, and all those things we will discuss going forward. So if you look at this particular graph, which has been taken from an internet, and you can see how exactly the serverless is dominating and how exactly it is being used by all the business. From the trend you can see from the years, like from starting from 2015 to 2025, how exactly this has been dominating. Okay, we will move on to the serverless components, and this will give some more insight. So before we get into the components, you have to understand what is called FAS. So you know PaaS, platform as a service, IaaS, infra as a service, CaaS, container as a service, SaaS, software as a service. So similarly, like we have FAS, this is called the function as a service. The FAS is a typical the serverless computing where developer write code in the form of function that can be triggered by events such as HTTP request, database update. The cloud provider runs the code on demand, the scales infrastructure automatically. So the developer can only pay for the computing resource used during the execution of the function. Okay, we will talk about something called event trigger. Event trigger are the events that triggers the execution of function. This can be external event such as HTTP request, database update, internal system events such as scheduled task or system events. API gateway. API gateway is a service that exposes API for external access. It provides a secure and scalable way to handle the incoming HTTP requests and route them to the appropriate serverless function. And we will talk about something called storage. Where exactly these functions get stored? If you're using AWS Lambda, it must be in S3 bucket. Same here. Serverless application often requires the storage to process the data between the function invocation, and cloud provider offer a range of storage options, including object storage service, file storage, and database. Authentication and authorization. Serverless applications may require authentication and authorization to control access to the resource. The cloud provider offers the service that can integrate with existing authentication provider, or provides their own authentication mechanism. For example, IAM, Identity Access Management. Who is writing the function and who is invoking the function? All those matters here. Monitoring and logging. Serverless application generates logs and metrics that can be used for troubleshooting and performance monitoring. Cloud provider offers service that collects and analyzes this data to help developers identify and resolve the issues. This is pretty simple. Whether your functions got executed properly, what is the latency, what is the error rate, and what is the success rate, and all those things we can monitor. Deployment and orchestration. Serverless application consists of multiple functions and resources that needs to be deployed and orchestrated. Cloud provider offer tools that simplifies the deployment and management of the serverless applications. So basically, you write a function and you will throw into the AWS or GCP or Azure. So how this functions gets deployed, and whenever the too many people invokes your function, how it gets scaled up, and all those matters. We will discuss all those things going forward. Okay, so wants to understand this serverless features like AWS, Lambda, Azure functions, GCP cloud functions. So it runs behind everything on Kubernetes. So when I looked into the internet, I researched it how the serverless components get orchestrated and collaborated and work together. So I identified this is something like it uses the Kubernetes in backend. Kubernetes is one of the more core important feature on running this serverless. For example, like to manage the function execution, Kubernetes leverage the native workload object called deployments. The deployments allows the developers to specify the desired state of the application, including the number of replicas, instance each function should be running it actually. When functions get triggered, the Kubernetes creates a new instance of the function called pod and routes the request to the pod. Once the pod has finished the execution, the pods gets terminated. You can map this to the native Kubernetes native feature called HPA. You know the horizontal pod autoscaler. Whenever the CPU gets triggered, and automatically it has to spin up a lot of pods. The same ideology it has been deployed here as well. So like HPA to automatically scale the number of function replicas based on the resource utilization. It can be anything CPU, memory, request per seconds, and all those things has to consider. HPA monitors the resource usages. The function spots automatically scales the number of replica up and down to meet the demand. Uh, okay, we can talk about something called how much they charge. Okay, if you use AWS Lambda or Cloud Functions or Azure Function, how much they charge. So these provider makes money by charging the customer for resource they use when they're running the serverless applications. The cost of using the serverless varies based on the several factors, including the cloud provider, the number of functions invocation, amount of computing resource used, the amount of data it gets transferred. Some functions it has to call to the database and it has to pull some data and give it, and that also it will get charged. Some functions just invokes the logic and give the data. Some functions uses a lot of CPU and memory usages. It's matters a lot actually when you're executing it. Okay, let's get into AWS Lambda function. The first 1 million invocation for, per month of free. Okay, and beyond that, the customer pays 0.20 per million requests. The computing time is built 100 millisecond increment with the first 4 lakh GB seconds per month being free. Beyond that, customer pays this much amount of number per seconds. Okay, and we will get into the cloud functions. Okay, the cloud functions is just very similar to AWS Lambda. They give 2 million invocation per month are free, and beyond that the customer pays $0.40 per million requests. The computing time is built with 100 milliseconds increment, with the first 4 lakh CPU seconds per month being free. Beyond that, customer pays this much of amount number per CPU seconds. Memory usage is built based this number. Okay, and we will get into for the Azure functions. The 1 million invocation per month are free, same as AWS Lambda, and beyond that, customer pays 0.20 per million requests. The computing time is built 1 second increment, with first 4 lakh GB seconds per month being free. Beyond that, customer pay this much of number per GB, and memory usage is built on this number per GB. Okay, so this is the charge they're going to charge you. So if you use the functions on any cloud provider. Okay, so which cloud provider are you going to choose? You can comment on the comment box, and if you like my videos, please do subscribe it. I'll be very happy if you hit the like button and subscribe it. Thank you so much.